You are very cordially,
you are very cordially invited to a party.
and it will be a grand affair.
Grand affair,
Grand affair.
and it will be a grand affair hosted by the Hatter.
We do hope that you can come.
You can come.
You can come. We do hope that you can come to share in all the joy.
This is something that I decided to do around January. I enjoyed the Arkham series on later gen consoles, namely the PS3 and Xbox 360. Of course, not owning an Xbox of any sort, I played the Batman games on PS3. I really enjoyed Arkham Asylum, beating it in just a few days. Arkham City was phenomenal, encouraging even more of the same, and then some. But for some reason, I never finished Origins, just feeling that there was something off about it. Determined to actually complete it, I decided to review the entire series. So as such, you're watching what my opinions on the Arkham PS3 trilogy is. I'm going to do them all in sequence, as much of the game remains the same with some things added or changed in each installment. And fair warning, there will probably be a spoiler or two. If you get your panties in a twist if you hear things that may ruin the plot, this review may not be for you. Just throwing it out there. So let's begin with the original Batman game on PS3, Batman Arkham Asylum. Jeez, where to even begin? Batman's had some success with games based on his lore, but he's also has failures. Like, Batman Forever. Okay, I didn't think the game was that bad, but it definitely wasn't amazing. But anyway, back to the point. Arkham Asylum. The game opens with Batman driving the Joker to Arkham Asylum. Joker is his normal, jovial self, and soon after, you're escorting him through the facility. Right from the start, you'll see that there is a lot of attention to detail to each aspect of the game, whether it be the visual style of the characters to even the conversations that you have. Even some of the voices are recognizable, like Mark Hamill, who plays the Joker just like he did in the animated series, along with Kevin Conroy voicing Batman. Man, I love those cartoons. I really need to get those on DVD. Anyway, every little bit of the game feels like something that was really taken out of the comic series. Of course, there are a few new characters specific to the game here and there, like one of the doctors that you encounter, but most of what you see is recognizable if you keep up with the comic lore. To which, I will admit that my actual knowledge on Batman is very limited. So if I happen to give out wrong information, I apologize in advance. But I'll try to stick with what I know. Gaming. Anyway, I've already mentioned the Joker, but you'll also encounter villains such as Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, Bane, and the Riddler. I will admit that the Riddler is a huge portion of the game, as he comprises the majority of the side quests in the game, but I'll get to that later. Each person that you meet up with has believable mannerisms. In addition to the main characters, you'll also find lore on some of the other characters in the Batman universe. This is all compiled in your character bio screen. This information includes stuff like their real name, height, weight, background story, and even what comic the person first appeared in. I actually like this feature as it helped me learn more about the Batman universe. So back to where I started, the story. Batman is escorting the Joker through the facility, and eventually, the Joker gets loose. Batman's goal is simple: find him and bring him back to justice. Of course, this isn't easy, as the Joker has reportedly set everything up so that Batman has to fight through the asylum, getting through hundreds of thugs and other main villains. There will be plenty of twists and turns, including the Warden gang kidnapped by Harley Quinn, a drug named Titan gang loose, and a Joker playing his unusual pranks. So let's move on to the main meat of the game, the combat. This is one of the main highlights to the game, and one that really puts this game on the map. It may look simple, and really, it is, up to a certain point. Batman doesn't have your normal brawler controls. You don't have light and heavy attacks, exquisite combos to memorize, or frustrating defensive mechanics. Instead, you have two main buttons to press during combat: square to punch, and triangle to counter. That's it. There's no separate block button, as it's unnecessary for this game. Here's how the combat works. You can initiate a fight by simply striking an enemy by pressing square. Once you hit a thug 3 times, you'll be in what's called free flow mode. You can then press a direction aim at another enemy, and square to hop over to that enemy, knocking him to the ground. You can then change directions and press square to knock over another enemy. You just keep repeating this until all thugs are knocked out. Using this system, you can incapacitate enemies and float around the room without taking damage and ensuring all enemies are floored. Often when you knock an enemy over, by the time they start getting back up, you'll be making your rounds back to knock them over again. Again, it's an easy system to learn, but a difficult one to master. This is because enemies won't just stand there and let you beat them up. They will start to throw punches, and that's when you see those blue streaks above their heads. When you see this, you know to press triangle to block and counterattack. This is all done automatically when pressing triangle, so you don't have to actually press 2 buttons, just push your enemy away. At first, you'll start with basic punches, but eventually the inmates will throw objects, wield weapons, and carry stun sticks, daggers, and even firearms. Gun-toting enemies should be dealt with immediately, since there's no way to actually block bullets. Knives have a separate way to counter them, as their icon is a yellow color instead of blue. Batman needs to hold back on the analog stick and hold triangle to evade all of the knife strikes. And if you see a red mark, it means you have to evade manually, because you can't counter it. Of course, if all you were required to do was systematically press square and occasionally triangle, the game will get redundant quickly. Batman does get more moves added to make encounters with different enemy types easier. By pressing circle, Batman throws his cape in front of him, stunning enemies. When doing this, you can mash square to initiate a beatdown on armored enemies to defeat them. Throwing the cape and then press X twice will throw an airborne attack to defeat shielded enemies. Pressing X twice towards a prisoner has Batman vault over him, allowing him to attack from behind, which is the way to defeat stun stick wielding foes. There's also special combos, like conjuring a sphere of bats to stun all nearby enemies, or some instant takedowns. These are done by getting your combo up to a certain degree and then pressing two buttons at once, like X and circle. But wait, that's not all! Batman also has some fancy pieces of equipment with him to assist in battles as well. Most of them can be quick thrown by pressing L1 along with the face button. If you press L1 alone, you'll quickly throw a batarang, which will stun a thug. You can use the back claw to disarm enemies wielding guns, making them a bit less of a threat. You may not necessarily use these gadgets during battles often, but the option is there. But Batman isn't always required to use upfront aggressive tactics, and will be given the choice to take a stealthy approach quite frequently. You can do this in normal battles by holding R2 to crouch, sneaking up to somebody, and pressing triangle to initiate a silent takedown. This will be a technique you'll want to use often, simply because there are certain rooms that are classified as predator challenges. You know where these areas are when you see gargoyles on the walls. Batman is expected to use these gargoyles to perch upon, and use what is known as detective mode to see where enemies are at. You'll then want to take out as many enemies as possible without being seen. This is because these enemies almost always are carrying guns, and since Batman doesn't use firearms, it's suicide to fight them all head on. You'll pick them off silently, and then the surviving gang members will be wondering what Batman is hiding. If you're seen, they'll open fire, and Batman can use various areas of the environment to hide, such as the gargoyles, available ventilation shafts, and grates in the floor. Batman does have a health meter, and it's replenished after every battle, although the amount of regenerated health depends on how well you did in the last combat encounter. The better off you do, in regards to not getting hit, having a large fight combo, implementing various gadgets, and in the case of predator challenges, not being seen or varying your takedowns, the more XP and health you recover. Honestly, most of the time, you'll max your health out after almost every encounter, unless you do incredibly bad and just barely scrape by. As for experience, it's obtained by defeating foes, completing Riddler challenges, and other miscellaneous things, like destroying Joker teeth and hacking security consoles. It is then used for upgrading Batman's arsenal. Some of the upgrades are worth it, such as the suit upgrades that allow you to take more punishment, or some of the combo attacks. Others won't be used too often, like the multi-targeted Batarang attack. Maybe you'll get more use out of them, but they just really weren't for me, as you'll earn XP constantly throughout the game, and there really isn't a ton of possible upgrades. You may even be able to obtain them all before the later portions of the game. Although, not all are unlocked right from the beginning, and require you to progress the story in order to unlock them all. This is because as you're playing, Batman will obtain new gadgets, and subsequent upgrades that are dependent on those pieces of equipment will obviously not be available until said equipment is found. It makes perfect sense. Although the graphics of the game accurately depict the world that Batman lives in, keeping it dark and gritty, you may notice that at times it turns into a very different, simplistic style. This is what is called detective mode, and you'll be using it a lot, especially if you're going for all of the Riddler challenges. You'll probably use it for a good chunk of the game, especially during Predator challenges, as it allows you to detect where enemies are through the walls. During combat situations, you'll also be able to figure out who is carrying weapons or has heavy armor on, but it also has its out-of-combat uses too. Detective mode will show you where electrical cables are running, so if there's a door locked, you can sometimes follow this cable to figure out what terminal to hack. You can also see where there are ventilation grates that you can remove, Riddler challenge items, and destructible walls. At times, you'll also be forced to use detective mode to scan in a forensic scene. This is often used to progress the story, and you'll need to scan in an object and then follow it to find a character. In later games, this is expanded upon, but that's the extent of the forensic scans. But most of all, you'll probably be using detective mode when going up against the Riddler. He'll have you searching for those question marks, or when entering rooms, you'll see a riddle. You'll need to scour the room for the answer to that riddle, and then hold down L2 to scan the screen. If you're right, the riddle will show up again, showing it solved, and you'll earn an XP bonus. A good chunk of the challenges also unlock character bios, concept art, and stuff like that. These Riddler challenges are completely optional, but it does contribute to the 100% rating, if you're anal about stuff like that. Some of the riddles are somewhat simple, but most of them will require you to randomly scan things in the environment, just to see if that's the right answer. Or maybe I just don't know enough about Batman lore to understand many of the riddles. So maybe you'll have a better understanding than I did. Or not. I don't know. To wrap up Detective Mode, yes, it's a cool feature of the game, and a required one at times, but I do feel that you're implementing it way too often. I want to take in the atmosphere of Arkham Asylum, but I'm not able to when I'm flying around in a much more limited color scheme that Detective Mode forces you to view it in. It's a shame, but I guess you really don't need to use it. I just found it easier that way. Now, I mentioned that there are quite a few cameos from many of the villains, and most of them that have a physical presence in the game are featured as bosses. You encounter Zaz, who is threatening to kill a doctor, and this is your first foray into some of the stealth mechanics of the game. You'll fight Bane, who happens to be a recurring villain in the games. You'll go through a romp in the sewers and try avoiding Killer Croc. You'll fight Poison Ivy in a battle that, to me, resembles something out of Devil May Cry. But probably my favorite battles involve your encounters with the Scarecrow. You'll be gassed, sometimes without even really realizing it, and then the events of the asylum start acting a bit unusually. Soon after, you'll be in Scarecrow's world, and you'll have to navigate the areas without going into the glare coming from his eyes. If you're seen, the game's over. This whole segment, which occurs 3 times throughout the game, are very enjoyable, and it really highlights some of the best points of the game. Oh, and if you really do want to go for 100%, those Riddler challenges aren't everything. Scattered around the asylum are audio logs of doctors interviewing the patients of the asylum. This helps contribute to the atmosphere even further, and a part of the game where it's already shining brightly. The game, although it feels nearly perfect, does have a few minor flaws. I already mentioned that you spend too much time in detective mode, but really, that's just a personal gripe. One thing seems to be a graphical hiccup. Some of the walls seem to have a green glow to them. This is most noticeable on shinier tiles on walls and floors. I don't know if it's just an issue with the engine, because I know this isn't the only game that I've noticed this in. On the PC games I've noticed it on, I thought maybe it was my video card. But this was played on PS3, so I know that's not the case. The other issue I have with the game is with the final battle, predictably against the Joker. Here's some spoilers to those who get kinda bitchy to that kind of thing. In a failed attempt to defeat Batman, Joker injects himself with Titan, which is essentially a drug that's even more powerful than Bane's venom. He then appears as a real circus freak, and you'll have to fight him on the roof of the asylum. You'll simply have to defeat his thugs, use the upgraded Batclaw to pull him down when he's taunting the news chopper, and bam, game is over. With so many other boss battles that were more engaging, this one just feels kind of like a huge letdown. That's really all I have for Batman Arkham Asylum. It's a highly addicting game that has fantastic elements from the comic series, a great, although basic, upgrade system, and it has a lot to look for. Plus the game is meaty, so you won't get through it too quickly. My score for Batman Arkham Asylum is a 10 out of 10. You couldn't see that coming, could you? But of course, I'm not done. I have 2 more games to go through. Granted, these reviews might be a bit shorter since they just add on to the formula that the first game created, but I want to give them all a fair review. So let's move on to the second game of the series, Batman Arkham City, which just so happens to take place about 6 months after Arkham Asylum. Here Batman, or really Bruce Wayne, is protecting the Arkham City, an area of Gotham where the city's criminals run amok amongst themselves. A mysterious security force known as Tiger goes and apprehends Bruce, and he finds himself tied up face to face with Hugo Strange. Hugo knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and says that Protocol 10 is now ready to commence. Bruce gets free, fights a few thugs, including the Penguin, and then climbs to a high point in Arkham City, requesting Alfred a Batwing drop of his suit. He dons it, and suddenly, you're playing as Batman again. Most of the game is identical to its predecessor, and most notably the combat system and Riddler involvement, although this is expanded up quite a bit. But instead, what you'll notice first and foremost is that Arkham City is much more heavily open in terms of progression. You're given a basic idea on where to go next, but you have almost complete free reign over the city and where you'd like to go. Just like other adventure games, you do need some equipment upgrades to access certain areas of the city, but from the start, a heavy part of the game is just plain exploration. You don't need to immediately go to see what Two-Face is up to at the courthouse. You can explore for Riddler challenges. You can hunt down thugs and beat them up to get yourself acquainted with the combat system. You can go hunt down the collectibles of the game that don't directly involve the Riddler, like popping Joker's balloons or destroying Tiger's surveillance cameras. And all of this adds up to XP to help you increase your skills in a massively overhauled system. As opposed to the dozen or so abilities that you had in Arkham Asylum, you now have about 30 different abilities that you can choose from. Instead of your basic life increase, you now have a separate armor meter for melee weapons and bullets. You get a lot more ways to take down your enemies. You also get something called a freeform focus, which increases Batman's speed when your combo count goes higher than a certain number, which I believe starts at 12 and then can be dropped down 8. Or was it 8 and then 5? I can't remember. So, who do you interact with this time around? Well, you got Hugo Strange, the Penguin, Catwoman, Solomon Grundy, Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, Deadshot, Robin, Oracle, and of course Alfred. All of these characters have an explicit reason for being in the game, whether it be major or minor. I'd like to focus on two of my favorite boss battles in this game. One is against Mr. Freeze, who is surprisingly missing from Arkham Asylum. Mr. Freeze is sort of an ally for a period of time, as you're trying to find an antidote. He then decides to turn on you, and Batman is forced to fight him. You're told that each time you damage Mr. Freeze, he memorizes that attack tactic, so you need to damage him by using different moves each time. For example, if you pop out of a grate like a jack-in-the-box to pummel him, if you try doing so again, he'll just counter it and do heavy damage to Batman. So you really need to mix up your strategy, and because of this, it gets the adrenaline pumping. The second of those two battles is against the Mad Hatter. It's actually a sneaky way that you get into this side quest scenario, which I won't reveal here. I'm trying to limit the spoilers I reveal, so that way not everyone hates me. Anyway, Batman wakes up to find himself at a tea party, and he has to defend himself against a bunch of thugs to pull off the strange-looking hat that the Hatter threw on Batman. I'd love to show you this, but one, it's actually more fun to experience yourself, and two, it looks like I never recorded it. Ah, damn it. So, what kind of new features were implemented in this game? Well, Batman has some new takedowns. You can now take down two unsuspecting enemies at once, although it's not considered a silent technique. You can shimmy along walls and pull enemies down, incapacitating them. You can bust through thin walls and eliminate thugs without having them use his explosive gel. You can also use his unlockable grapple gun boost to take down enemies while propelling upwards, although this is a bit harder to time. Did you want to know about the story of Arkham City? Okay, fine, I'll give you a small taste, but I won't ruin the end because it honestly shocked me when I first played it, although I really should have seen it coming. After defeating Two-Face in the courthouse, Batman is talking to Catwoman and is shot at by a rifle. You eventually find out it was fired by the Joker, and Batman uses detective mode to track him down. Finding him but being lured into a trap, the Joker injects some of his own poisoned blood into Batman, therefore getting him sick. For the record, the Joker was definitely ill due to his overdose on the Titan from Arkham Asylum, and he definitely doesn't look good here. Batman goes hunting for a cure, while Joker is racing him to it. All the while, you're hearing Hugo Strange announcing updates on the Protocol 10, so Batman also needs to find out exactly what Protocol 10 is. His mission takes him all over Arkham City, and in the meantime, he'll be given other objectives from the other villains. Deadshot is killing random people and Batman needs to stop him. Different political prisoners are being harassed by thugs. The Riddler has even more stuff for you to do, including his own challenges, such as sliding into an enemy within a battle, or performing a certain quickfire gadget move during combat. Zaz has you running around, hunting down payphones before time expires, otherwise he'll kill an innocent person. And Bane needs your help destroying surplus tanks of Titan. All in all, there's a hell of a lot more to do here in Arkham City, and you'll never get sick of flying above the cityscape, paying attention to everything below. Sure, you'll be spending a lot of time in detective mode again, especially if you're up for finding all 200 of the Riddler's question mark pickups, but that's optional, and again, not required. And let's say that you've spent the last 10 hours trying to complete the Riddler's challenges and forgot the main story. There is a recap option that allows you to scroll through the few panels to explain the story so far, and what you're supposed to be doing now. The most up-to-date panels are also shown while loading the game, so you shouldn't ever feel that you're completely and utterly lost. There's only one complaint I have for Arkham City, and it's one I feel for a lot of games that have DLC. When starting the game, you're always harassed to purchase the Catwoman DLC. Not once, not twice, every frickin' time. Developers, do me a favor. Don't harass me about DLC. Most of the times, it's not gonna push somebody just to buy it just to get that screen out of the way. And I think the DLC is on disc because you see the Catwoman Riddler challenges at all times. Sorry, but this kind of crap pisses me off. If you put something on the disc, it should be immediately playable. Any DLC should be that. Downloadable content. It's not called ODC or on-disc content. Bastards. Everything about Arkham City just feels an expansion of the original engine used in Arkham Asylum. It's darker, it's got more lore, and the combat is given even more options at taking out gang members. There's more gadgets, and the optional combat and predator challenge maps that allow you to test your skills outside of the main game return, again with even more to do. This game is a must-play for any Batman fan, or even for any adventure game fan. It's really that fun. My score for Arkham City is a perfect 10 out of 10. Without a doubt, this is one of my favorite games of all time, and that's saying a lot. I play a lot of games. But I'm not done yet. I still have one more game to talk about, Arkham Origins. If you can't figure it out from the title, this is essentially the prequel to Arkham Asylum. First thing to note is that the game wasn't created by Rocksteady. Instead, this one was licensed out to Splash Damage. At least I think, according to the opening credits. In any case, it's not the same guys. And sadly, this shows throughout the game, because if there's one quote that sums up Arkham Origins, it's, "Been there, done that." The game begins with Batman approaching Blackgate Prison on Christmas Eve, answering to a breakout that's led by Black Mask. When you're done with the prison, you fight Killer Croc on the roof, who is then eventually thrown off the building. Being that this game takes place early in Batman's career, the cops don't realize that he's one of the good guys, and they want to apprehend Batman for questioning. Of course, Batman doesn't allow this, and he escapes to the Batcave. A few other events occur, and Batman eventually learns about some criminal named the Joker, and wants to learn more about him and take him down. The main plot of the game is that the Black Masks hired 8 assassins to take down and kill Batman. These assassins are Killer Croc, Deathstroke, Firefly, Copperhead, Deadshot, Electrocutioner, Shiva, and Bane. So Batman tries to hunt down these guys to prevent them from getting a leg up and actually succeeding on the hit. I'm going to get one of my biggest gripes out of the way now. They changed the controls a bit. Not by much, mind you, but why change the controls when it's not necessary? Basically, L2 and R2 use your gadgets, and L1 activates detective mode, which is reversed from the previous 2 games. Why was this necessary? And to further complicate matters, you can't change this. It's just one of the many problems that plague this game. So let's see, what should I mention next? Well, your upgrade system stays the same, and somehow, you have even more options to choose from. Many of them are locked until you unlock previous skills, so you are a bit more limited on what upgrades you can choose from at the start of the game. But still, it's nice to see that even more skills were added. You won't be spending as much time in detective mode in the game. The Riddler challenges still exist, but instead of hunting for those question marks and scanning the environment to answer his riddles, you're just hacking radio towers, destroying networking nodes, and finding pieces of blackmail that Batman is trying to decode to stop the Riddlers from ruining the lives of many of Gotham's privileged citizens. Instead, detective mode is used quite a bit when inspecting the various crime scenes that litter the game. There's probably a bit over a dozen in total, and when encountering them, you tap L1 to enter detective mode and then hold X to scan important items, signified as a red triangle. The main difference is that sometimes you'll have to reconstruct the crime scene. You use L2 and R2 to advance and rewind, and you'll need to pay attention to the environment. If it's a plot-required scene, you'll have to do this to progress the story. If it's a side quest crime scene, once all is said and done, you'll need to find the perp and apprehend them. These guys don't fight any different than your other run-of-the-mill thugs, and all you have to do to defeat the group of enemies that they hide in, and then press triangle to interrogate and then knock them out. Batman will then tell Alfred to call the GCPD with the evidence and location of where the criminal is. To recap, these crime scenes are a much-needed new feature of the game, because there isn't a lot that differentiates it from previous games. And why is that? Well, combat stays the same, which I'm perfectly fine with, but the environment you're exploring is Gotham City, and much of the game is nearly identical to Arkham City. So if you played Arkham City, you pretty much know what to expect in Origins, for the most part at least. A big selling point is that you get to see Gotham before pieces of it became Arkham City, so at least that's a selling point. The equipment you obtain is nearly identical, although for some reason you start with the Grapno Boost upgrade from City. This doesn't make sense because in Arkham City, Batman tells Alfred to drop off the boost, even though it hasn't been field tested and is still in prototype phases. Here, it seems like a perfectly functioning thing that Batman had forever. The ice grenade that you got from Mr. Freeze returns as a glue grenade in here, and functions identically. It's a bit disappointing that not more effort went into new gadgets. You do get electrical gloves that increase the power against your enemies, and they're charged up by landing hits, but after every battle they automatically drain. So basically, if you don't use them, you're just wasting their built-up energy. It's a mind-boggling way to work them. I can see that the developers were trying to balance the game, but even so, I don't like it. I will say that there's a new enemy type in the form of martial artists. These guys will attack, and you'll have to press triangle to counter twice. In addition, when attacking, you may have to counter their counter. Origins did at least include this, so combat has improved a bit, and in terms of variety. But then again, combat itself just feels a bit slower than in previous games. I'm not sure why this is the case, but it just feels off. Because of this, I think my rhythm felt wrong, so I wasn't able to get as many flawless combos in. One thing the game did add is a scaling challenge feature. Batman has 4 different challenge categories, and each has 15 separate feats that Batman can opt to complete. By doing so, you get bonus XP and also gadget upgrades. Some of these are simple, like clearing a crime scene that gets put over the radio, or gliding a specific distance without using Grapno Boost. But others are more difficult, like the final one, where you have to get a 50-hit combo without getting hit and using every move in your arsenal. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, I consider myself a pretty above-average gamer, but shit, I'm never going to be able to do that. At least this adds some sort of optional challenge as opposed to the more basic ones that Arkham City provides. One welcome addition to the game is a fast travel system. In order to access a fast travel point, You must hack the radio tower, the same ones that the Riddler is protecting. Once you do, you can open the map and select a point to call the Batwing, and warp to that point. On that fact, you're also able to freely access the Batcave, and it's in here where you can talk to Alfred, practice your combat skills, or just plain relax. The final portions of the game take place in the Batcave, so it's nice to see a bit more emphasis on this important area of Batman's life. The main problem with Batman Arkham Origins is that the story just isn't nearly as interesting as Arkham City. Truth be told, I just finished this game a few weeks ago, and I already forgot the story. I do remember Bane being the final enemy, Black Mask getting screwed over, and an awesome epic fight against Deathstroke. But other than that, it's not very memorable. At times, it's downright boring. And glitchy. That's right, glitchy. Let me talk about a few. First off, the save system seems to be a bit inconsistent. For example, I fought and defeated Deathstroke. I got the Claw upgrade, which allows you to create your own tightropes at specific grapple points. I decided to take a break, so I shut off the game. I come back later, and for reasons unknown, I had to fight Deathstroke again. What the hell? It shouldn't be. I saw the game save, so why the checkpoint seems to have went backwards, I don't understand. There's also other times where I got stuck and had to reset. One, I was just simply navigating the world, and as the game was saving, it froze up. Now another, during yet another Mad Hatter segment, which happens to be one of the best points of the game, I dropped into an area where you have to figure out a puzzle involving doors, and I just couldn't move, requiring yet another reset. Do I have a buggy copy? It's possible. The game just doesn't look scratched or smudged or anything, so I just don't know. But either way, it is frustrating. And I almost forgot to mention that the voice actors aren't the same in this game. The Joker tries to do a good job mimicking Mark Hamill, but he's not quite there. And the fact that the game seems to focus a lot on the Joker's teeth make them feel disproportionate to the rest of his face. Batman is also using a different voice actor, and when it comes to his attitude and speech in the game, he comes off as a dick, especially to Alfred. Alfred begs Batman just to stay home and not go on a suicidal run to take down the assassins. And Batman obviously goes out anyway, but he just flips out on Alfred for no reason and leaves. And later on, it nearly costs Alfred his life. I didn't like this portrayal of Batman. I know he's an aggressive fighter and tries to be mean, especially to criminals, but the fact that he's such a dick to Alfred irritates me a bit. So overall, Arkham Origins feels like it took way too much from its source games and didn't do much with it. Most of the side quests feel like simple fetch quests, whether you have to find a bunch of items and destroy them, or defeat thugs a certain amount of times. Even the mission that Zsasz gives you in Arkham City, where you're flying from the phone booth to phone booth, returns in Arkham Origins from Anarchy. But instead of phone booths, you're going to bombs. The combat is similar, but new additions just don't feel worthwhile. And the story is just plain blah. Sure, that really picks up near the end, but at that point, it almost feels like too little too late kind of deal. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fun game, but it just feels lacking, especially if you played the previous games. My score for Arkham Origins is 7 out of 10. So let's recap and finish this all up. All three games are good games in their own rights, although Origins does have a few hiccups and doesn't feel nearly as interesting. Each portrays the Batman lore perfectly, and each feels like it could have been lifted right from the comics. The combat is smooth, the gameplay addictive, and the characters believable. Overall, these are games you must play. At least, Asylum and City are must-plays. So once again, let's recap. Arkham Asylum, 10 out of 10. Arkham City, 10 out of 10. Arkham Origins, 7 out of 10. I'm sure I'm missing some features that are in each game, but it's okay, because I think I covered the majority of them. But seriously, if you're a Batman fan, these games must be played. Origins can be skipped and you won't miss much, but Asylum and City are definitely worth it. And I know what you're thinking. When am I going to play and review Arkham Knight? Not until I get a PS4, my friends. I could buy it on PC, but I feel like this game is a console game. So until I shell out the cash for a new console, which I don't see myself doing anytime soon, Arkham Knight will be out of my reach. Unless somebody wants to buy me a PS4 and a copy of the game. Then we'll talk. But I doubt I have any takers on that. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.